Hi guys, welcome back, and on with the painting of the Jagdpanther crew figures. And what I thought I'd do, rather than show all 5 figures, which I think would be fairly painful, I'll just sort of show the stages on a couple of them across the way. So I always start off with giving them an undercoat, base coat with a light grey Testers primer, which really seems to take the paint nicely, so I've been using that right from the get-go. And then I just block out the major colours, so I'm reasonably careful. I try not to sort of drift into areas where it shouldn't be, but I'm not fanatical about it at this stage because I'm not an efficient painter. Once the base colours are on, I fiddle with them forever. And what I thought I would do, because everyone knows how to paint, what I thought might be helpful was a little bit of a focus on doing the faces, because I think a lot of people find that very hard. I certainly do. But I think I'm starting to get a bit of a technique. So I just do a base coat and then paint in the eyes, and that's the start of then me really concentrating on the detail of the figures. And if I get the face right, or if I get the face right to the point where I'm happy with it, I find the rest of it flows pretty easily, and it sort of feels to me like it gives the figure some character. So I get the white in for the eyes. I use an off-white, not a bright white, and then get the eyeballs in. And again, I'm not overly fussy about the size of things at this stage, because as you see now, I come back in with the flesh colour and start to get a little bit more careful about how large the whites of the eyes are. And then once I think I've got that right, I've got a better sense of how big the eyeballs are, and I'll go back in again with some off-white just to reduce the eyeballs if I need to, and the left eyeball here certainly needed to be reduced. And I find that the better the figure, the better quality the figure, the easier this is if they've got better defined mouldings around the eyes. It's just a matter of taking your time. I take forever to get this right, and in some cases have to start again and just get the flesh colour over the top of everything again and start again. But it's worth, I think, taking time, because I really do think the face is what makes the figures, and the clothing is really just like painting on the numbered dots and getting them all in the right place. So it evolves slowly. Once that's all dry, I'll do things like put the eyebrows in and then come back. And so I use a wet palette, and I use the same base coat colour, and I'm just adding lighter shades of flesh to that base coat colour, or darker shades, and then use that to pick out the areas, the highlights on the forehead and the nose and the chin and sometimes the jawline, and then come back again under that. But lots of very thin coats, never use it very thick, it's always quite diluted, and always very sparing on the brush, and just work it in, work it in, work it in. And if it doesn't look right, then come back with some darker colour. As I said, I'm not a very efficient painter. I spend ages. I think it probably took me an hour to get this guy's face close to right, and then I probably came back and fiddled with it again for at least half an hour later on, because I wasn't happy with bits and pieces of it. So with this guy, I just thought I'd show a little bit about the darker shades, and in particular the mouth. So I like to give that using the same flesh colour with some brown added to it, so it looks quite dark. A very light wash there, and just under the eyes to give a little bit of definition to the sockets, the eye sockets, and again very sparingly and quite diluted, and work that across into the rest of the face, and a little bit under the nose. And then the lips themselves, add a little bit of red to the mixture, and then put that on, and very, very diluted. So what I found, if I do it very diluted, and it looks horrible because it runs over, but then I dry the brush and come back in with the brush and basically lift most of the paint back out, and it just seems to leave a nice trace behind, doesn't look like they've had lipstick put on, which sometimes can be an accidental result. And then I really start picking out the details. And again, with the models today, the moulding is usually so good that it's easy to pick it out. And I like to get the top done, but I also go over the edges, and I like to cover the sides as well. And that way it doesn't matter which angle you're looking at it, all the raised pieces are covered. And all that means is that I come back in later on with the base colour, in this case it would be the black, and a very diluted black mixture, just to sort of fill the low areas, and that seems to work quite nicely. With the decorations, I was using very little paint on the brush and almost dry brushing it on. You get a little bit of spillage over the edges, but again, just come back and pick that up with a diluted solution of the. And it was at this point in the painting process that I realised I'd missed a few details on these two figures, so I just added those on and brought them back up to what the photo looks like. So on with doing the highlights, and effectively just dry brushing lighter tones of the base colour to pick up the raised pieces of the clothing. And for the jacket, I really just used the same grey as I used on the trousers, and then you'll see later on I use the same grey as the shirts on the trousers. And then once I'd done that, I went back through again and added a little bit of off-white to those colours, and then went back over everything with a much lighter one again. The key is to keep the brush strokes really light. I think a soft brush and very light strokes. If you get a little bit too much on, you can always quickly wipe it off with your finger. If it gets into low spots that you don't really want it to be in, then it's just a matter of going back in afterwards with the base colour and then very carefully just cleaning that up as well. So it takes a little bit of time, but I think it's worth it, and gradually building it up and being very light with the brush allows you to get different types of highlights on the raised areas. And again, if you feel there's too much, it's easy to wipe it off or go back in with the base colour, but I think looks better, I think, if you build it up slowly and there's modulation in the raised areas along the way. I didn't do any highlighting on the jacket for the Tank Commander. I figured that the weathering process and putting the wash over would bring out the highlights without having to go over the top of them again. And then finally finish up with the wash. So obviously spray the figures with a gloss coat to protect them. And then artist oil, I used burnt sienna for just a dirt effect, and mineral spirits, and went very sparingly on the clothing. I figured these guys are in a rest area, so I avoided their hands and their faces, so they should be nice and clean. And but their uniform's probably still a little bit battle weary with a little bit of dirt in the deep recesses. So just went over it pretty gently. The jacket took it it up nicely. I think it worked well not highlighting it and just letting the wash get into the recesses, so I was pretty happy with how that came up. And that's about it, guys. So we'll just have a look for a couple of minutes at a little bit of video of the finished product and slideshow, and some super close-ups with my new macro lens. So that actually shows a few of the areas that you can't see with the naked eye, but I think it's worth including them just for reference of the detail. So that's it for the figures. They'll be ready to go onto the diorama probably in the next one, where I'll do the base, and that will let me get the position of the tank and the house and get that sort of visually correct. And then the last thing will be, after that, the actual camo painting of the tank, which I'm looking forward to doing as well. So thanks very much again, guys, for watching. I really do appreciate the comments. I actually really look forward to them. I hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to sharing the next one with you soon.